gentlemen, welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I, understandably so, we're a little bit late to the whole trade deadline thing because we've got lives and don't get paid tons of money to do this. So, we got to pick a day that works, and it's 2 days after the trade deadline. But, we figure the best part about it is that now everything gets to simmer, settle a little bit. Everybody gets their opinions. And then we swoop in with the real deal. That's the way it goes. We just come in a little bit later, but then we've actually thought it through. It's not that knee-jerk reaction. So that's what you're going to get from us. And we are just going to run down all the trades surrounding trade deadline day, starting with the New Jersey Devils and the New York Islanders making one of the biggest splashes of the trade deadline. I know it wasn't trade deadline day, but the region. Justin, before we dive in, what did you think about this year's trade deadline?
Uneventful, but to the point to where I kind of expected it, right?
Your team made the biggest move.
I know. Well,
wasn't that uneventful?
That was great. Last minute, Steve Yzerman swooping in and stealing the show as he normally does. But, I did not expect a ton of movement. I did not expect as many trades. And it showed, right? I mean, a lot of teams up against the cap, a flat cap right now. And, we saw a lot of trades where third teams coming in to broker some money and get a little tiny pick out of it. And my Red Wings being one of them. And so, I outside of that Mantha trade, there weren't any gigantic trades at deadline, but most of the trades were made the night before or the week before. And so, overall, I would call it trade week versus trade day, in my opinion. But,
sure. It kind of always ends up being something like that.
Right.
At least 72 hours worth of trades or something. Okay, well let's just jump right into the first deal between the Devils and the Islanders, the one that really got everything kicked off. I'd say that's the best way to describe this deal. Is it really it began the snowball? Because once those guys were out, it obviously allowed for other teams to move elsewhere. So the New Jersey Devils give Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac to the New York Islanders in exchange for AJ Greer, Mason Jost, 2021 first-round pick, and a 2022 conditional fourth-round pick. And if the Islanders happen to go to the Stanley Cup Finals this year, that fourth-round pick becomes a third-round pick in either 2022 or 2023. The Islanders are the ones who have the option of which pick they will transfer. So, what do you think of this deal? And I don't know if there's really a way to say that there was a winner and a loser because both teams got what they needed. But what do you think of Palmieri and Zajac on the Islanders?
Yeah, you know what? I think you put it perfectly. There's no winners here. And we'll wait and see how deep the Islanders go with both these guys and if they can contribute. But, yeah, I like Palmieri. I think he was a guy that a lot of teams had their eyes on. We kind of figured he was probably going to hit the open market and leave New Jersey this offseason with a team that's in the middle of a rebuild and not really contending at this point, and he's getting up there in age. However, what I will say is Palmieri fits the Islander style of play very, very well. However, on the downside of that, if you look over the last couple of years, his goal-scoring ability is kind of going down. Now, again, does that, say more about the Devils themselves of being not being able to produce anymore, or is that more or less that he's on the decline, right?
Well, other than this year, really, he's 25 goals last year in 65 games, 27 in 74 the year before, and 24 in 62 the year before that, 26 in 80 and 30 in 82 before that. So I don't know if you can really say that his goal scoring's declined other than this year, which I would agree with, but the Devils have been lackluster. Is that a good word for it? So basically, yes. He's on pace for a 16, probably a 20 goal season in 82 games this year, which still isn't bad, but when you're talking about a guy who's supposed to be your top line forward, that's not a good year.
Yeah, let's face it, too. For a first-round pick, that's likely going to end up being a late first-rounder anyways. This is a home run because now for Zajac, too, they acquire him as well. They get some flexibility, right? So on that middle six, bottom six pairing, wherever you want to put him in terms of, third or fourth line. You get some flexibility, right? You can put him on the wings, you can put him at center, and he's still a decent faceoff guy. So that gives you some flexibility there with your lineup as well. And then, of course, it's depth, right? And we know come playoff time, having depth really pays off. And so for a team that likes to play a good defensive game, they've got a guy in Zajac who's pretty good at both ends of the ice.
Yeah, Zajac was playing with Barzal and Eberle, actually.
Yeah.
And then you had Palmieri with Pajot and Wallstrom, which I mean, it is interesting to me, seeing Travis Zajac playing up that way. Whereas,
yeah, and I do think you're going to see a lot of switching in terms of those guys are going to till they find something that really clicks and works.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Palmieri already has a goal. Zajac has nothing through 3 games. I mean, it's small, very small sample size. Palmieri getting some looks on that second power play unit as well. So, I mean, all in all, I think it's a fantastic move for the New York Islanders in replacement of Anders Lee. I mean, you had to do something. You're not going to get another Anders Lee. And, maybe a little bit of a committee replacing Anders Lee, which was kind of what you had to do anyways. And when you look at this team, even without Anders Lee, they're still a Stanley Cup contender. And definitely a team that, in this East Division, they're one of 3-4 teams that you're pretty sure could make it out of here. This division's just insane, though. Islanders could lose in the first round, and I don't think I'd be surprised. They could lose in the first round. They could be up against Pittsburgh. Potentially, they play I doubt they'll end up playing Washington in the first round, but
could play Boston.
Play Boston.
You never know.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy run to the conference finals for anyone in this division. Like, there's not going to be any team where you go, wow, what a disappointment they lost to this team. Like, there's just division's just stacked.
Yeah, and what I will say too is I'm glad the Islanders didn't wait to get closer to the deadline like some teams did. They went out, they knew what they wanted, they got their guy, and they didn't wait for someone else to swoop in and grab him.
Exactly. You give your guys that little extra time to just adjust to a new team, adjust to a new system, and I agree. I like that as well. For the Devils, I mean, a first round pick. To me, I love the idea of, hey, they gave up 2 players. Yes, they retained a little over $5 million in salary as well. But rather than dealing these guys individually, where you might not have gotten that first round pick, I like that they packaged them together and they were able to kind of upgrade. Even though let's say the Islanders lose in the first round. I mean, it's still likely to be just somewhere around number 20, 21. So it's still not a super high pick, but hey, it's still a first round pick, and you've just got that much higher chance of getting somebody of higher caliber, which really is what the Devils need. Like, the Devils aren't filling their roster with a couple, this guy here, grab him in the third round and he'll play in your bottom 6. Like, Devils don't need bottom 6 guys. The Devils need high end talent. And generally, you find those guys in the first round. So, good on the Devils to find that first round pick. Good on Sweet Lou bringing in two of his boys, I'd say.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, the Blackhawks. They were sort of. I mean, they made a few moves on this day. Kind of interesting moves that the Blackhawks made. Almost, it was trade deadline day, but they're making some moves that will potentially help them in the future. They bring in Brett Connolly, Henrik Borgstrom, who was I believe, a high second-round pick for the Florida Panthers at one point, Riley Stillman, and a 2021 seventh-round pick. They give up Lucas Wallmark and Lucas Carlson, so essentially taking on some salary in Brett Connolly that allowed the Panthers some flexibility later on in the day. But, they bring in Brett Connolly, who... Brett Connolly has... he's not that far removed from a 20-goal season. I think 2-3 years ago he had 22. Last year he had 19. Like this, yes, he only has 4 points in 21 games. He just no longer fit with the Panthers, but he won a Stanley Cup with the Washington Capitals, if you remember. He did really well in the playoffs. He had 9 points, 6 goals in those 24 games. So Brett Connolly, a guy with some experience and somebody who can, maybe fit somewhere in that bottom 6 for Chicago. A veteran guy who will fit, I think, in Chicago.
Yeah, and I mean, the key in this whole trade, right, was obviously moving out the salary. But Borgstrom really, for Chicago getting that prospect there, I think that's what they really wanted. And taking on that salary for a team in Chicago that's going to have some cap space over the next couple of years. They're not looking to spend anytime soon, from what I understand. So getting a good prospect out of it just to move a couple contracts out and take on, a little over $2 million isn't so bad.
Yeah, this is actually the second time in less than a year, or I guess in 14 months, that the Florida Panthers have traded for Lucas Wallmark. They acquired him from the Carolina Hurricanes last year. So Lucas Wallmark is obviously he's kind of there to fill space, but he's had some decent years last couple years playing that bottom 6 role. So Lucas Wallmark maybe could also do something for the Florida Panthers moving forward, and he's nice and cheap. Okay, the Leafs acquire Riley Nash from the Columbus Blue Jackets for a monster conditional 7th round pick. It upgrades to a 6th round pick if Nash appears in 25% of the Leafs 2021 playoff games, which I think is likely, unless he gets hurt. So likely it's a 6th round pick for Riley Nash.
Yeah, and can't be upset about this, right? I mean, he's a good centerman. Takes face-off very well, and he's responsible at both ends. He's not going to, produce a ton of points for you, but for a fourth-line guy, I mean, he does what's needed and can produce just enough to be, to basically take up that spot, right? So,
yep.
For a team, again, that, has had problem filling in roles on that fourth line, it seems like they found a guy that can come in, and he can play on the wing too, so that's always nice. So if you still want to keep Spets on that fourth line, or if you want to bump him up to the third, whatever you want to do, you got flexibility now too.
Yeah. And he has a good amount of playoff experience in the NHL. He's played 32 games of playoff experience over the last 4 years. So definitely not a bad guy to have around. He's actually won a couple rounds in his career, unlike a couple guys on the Leafs. So they can always use that. But yeah, I mean, a nice depth move for the Leafs, and definitely like a salary move. They were able to do this because of some of the guys on LTIR. So, okay, the Avalanche acquire Patrick Nemeth for a 4th round pick from the Detroit Red Wings. Pretty straightforward. Red Wings retain 50% of the salary as well. Your thoughts? Are you good with getting a 4th round pick for Nemeth?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is, Detroit just getting what they can at this point for some of these guys that are on expiring deals. And, I think a 4th round pick is a good return on a guy who plays a good defensive game, can pair up on your, he's a good number 4, number 5 defenseman, for Colorado, and especially for a Colorado team that is poised to make a push right there, Stanley Cup contender. But the concern is, what we're hearing is that Eric Johnson is not likely going to be back during the regular season. There's a potential for him to return in the playoffs. But for a team that really last year you saw Eric Johnson go out and really miss his defensive side of the game, right? And it really hurt this team. And so, again, this is a guy, Patrick Nemeth, who is pretty good. He's got decent, metric numbers here. So I like this move. He kind of gives them a little flexibility and, little insurance on the back end. And it never hurts to have depth at defense either.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is actually the second time that the Colorado Avalanche have acquired Patrick Nemeth. They signed him back in 2018, and then he left, signed with the Red Wings, and here he is getting traded back to the Avalanche. So I do think some of this trade is probably, the Avalanche could have gone out and gotten any number of guys, like, there were other guys available like a Patrick Nemeth, and they go after the guy that they know. And I think that's there's definitely something to that. You try to get the guys that you know can fit your system, and why not bring in a guy who you liked, who happened to just go sign somewhere else in the offseason.
Yep.
One trade that had me scratching my head, which, a lot of the things that the Buffalo Sabres have done over the last, 12 years have left me scratching my head. But Brandon Montour for a 3rd round pick. to the Florida Panthers. That's it. 3rd round pick for Brandon Montour. I mean, Brandon Montour is a top 4 defenseman, in my mind, and he just went for a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, not only that is he a top 4, but he's a right-handed shot, which teams covet, right? And we know Florida is, without Aaron Ekblad, so they have that need for a right-handed shot. So you would think that Buffalo could have leveraged that.
Like a second.
Maybe at least a second. Yes, absolutely.
Or 2/3 or something. I don't know.
Right. A little bit more than that. And I think Buffalo was maybe at a point, where they're just like, sell everything, get what you can. And maybe they're, Kevin Adams is sitting there thinking, okay, crap, I'm on my way out the door. I might as well make this look okay.
Rookie. No, he's not going to get fired.
No. I mean, he's not going to get fired, but I mean, he's definitely going to be on the hot seat here, maybe next season.
But this is his first year as a general manager.
I know, but
he's in his first full year. I don't think that he's getting fired, but I do. I question some of that. It's almost like, all these teams trading with Florida, they turned on a trade difficulty to easy. Because some of these things just, I can almost guarantee you, if you went and you go play NHL 21, I don't think you could make those moves with the Buffalo Sabres. I don't think that the computer would accept them.
No.
So that's kind of
no. Yeah. And Montour, he's a big body. He can still move his feet, produce a little bit, and I mean, yeah, 3rd round pick. I was a little disappointed in that, but good on the Florida Panthers at least going out and getting somebody to fill in that back end because they needed to. They need to send a message to the locker room and say, hey, we're in on it for you guys this year. We want you to make a deep run.
All right. Let's go. The Colorado Avalanche in another deal with the San Jose Sharks. As predicted, you did, I believe, predict that Devin Dubnyk would get dealt at the deadline, and he goes to the Avalanche for Greg Pateryn and really just a salary dump and a 2021 5th-round pick. Your thoughts on the deal?
Disappointed from Colorado's perspective, right? Like, I understand they wanted to go out and get a goaltender because Grubauer's great. Frank Kuz is not going to be playing in the playoffs, and so you don't want any one of those guys that I think they got Johansson from Buffalo. They picked him up on waivers. You don't want to rely on any of these guys should Grubauer go down just like he did last year, right? We saw what happened with this team. They exploded and just everybody thought they were going to win the cup. Then their goaltender gets injured. Eric Johnson's gone on the back end, and this team just falters hard. Now, when we talked about it earlier, right, with Patrick Nemeth, familiarity coming in, in Colorado, he's been there before. A guy I thought that was primed to get picked up by Colorado was Jonathan Bernier. Honestly, I think it wouldn't have cost them anything more than maybe a 4th or 3rd round pick at this point. And, to give up a 5th for a guy in Devin Dubnyk, in my opinion, who is way past, anything, that I would expect out of a backup. This guy is a 3rd, maybe 4th stringer goalie at best right now at this point in his career.
Well, did the Wings just not want to, did they not want to deal Bernier? Because obviously they had every opportunity to do it at the deadline, and they didn't.
You know what?
It's not like they dealt him to another team, right?
No, there wasn't a big goaltender market, but I think there have been rumblings that the Wings would like to retain Bernier past this year because obviously the Wings don't have any real goaltender prospects in the pipeline coming up. So I think Bernier sticking around would be great, and I think they could get him at a reasonable price. But, it wouldn't have hurt to say, hey, do you want to go somewhere and, make a run at a cup right now? Because the Wings, he knows the Wings are a few years removed from being even bubble playoff contenders at this point. So, why not give him an opportunity, I guess? Yeah,
but at the same time, Devin Dubnyk, well, he just has a better pedigree, I'll say. Like, even if they aren't that different of a player now in terms of maybe their statistics, it's really hard to look at anybody on the San Jose Sharks and point the finger at the way that they played. Like, they just don't play for a team with such good defensemen. Supposedly, they hang their goalie out to dry quite a bit. And I know Bernier's had a halfway decent season, which it might explain why the Wings want to hold on to him. They're telling him, hey, you've been playing really well this year. He's a solid. I don't think he's a number 1 at all, but he's a solid 1B. I think you need to have a guy who's better than him on your team, but he definitely can slide in if there was an injury. Jonathan Bernier is fine coming in for several games in a row. But I think this is more of a case of the Wings not wanting to give up Bernier, and also Devin Dubnyk maybe a little more poise. I think when it comes to a guy, you look at him, you go, I mean, he's won the Vezina. Did he win a Vezina? I feel like he won a Vezina.
No,
he didn't win a Vezina. Well, he came close. Nope. He was nominated, right? He was in the top three.
Yes, he's been nominated. Yes,
I'll take it. Okay. He has the pedigree, and Jonathan Bernier really just has a pedigree of being of losing and playing for really bad teams. So maybe this is a little bit
does well on those bad teams. So put him on a good team for once, and we'll see where
he
goes.
Tell me that the Leafs, man, that guy was so bad. All right, let's get off the Bernier train. Okay, big move. The Columbus Blue Jackets and the Tampa Bay Lightning via the Detroit Red Wings. The Lightning acquire David Savard and Brian Lashoff. The Blue Jackets get a first and a third round pick from Tampa Bay. The first in 2021, the third in 2022, and the Red Wings, the David Savard gets dropped off for a moment, and they scoop up $2 million, and they got a fourth round pick for their $2 million, and out the door he goes. Your thoughts on this move? How do you feel about fourth round? Is a fourth round pick worth $2 million?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at previous years, what it costs to retain salary, the Wings actually did a little bit better, and I think that's set because the market is what it is with the flat cap and teams not willing to spend. So yeah, to spend $2 million to get a fourth rounder, why not, right? The Wings aren't exactly a franchise that's hurting for money. There are a few of them in the NHL that are. So the Wings had an opportunity in cap space to get a little something, and they did. And I mean, yes, it is Tampa's fourth rounder, so it's likely going to be at the bottom, the end of that fourth round. But still, for a couple $1 million, I mean, why not? The bigger kicker for me, though, in this whole thing was Tampa Bay landing the top defenseman on the trade bait boards, right? I mean, there were rumors for a while about Ekholm being available and then not when Nashville got hot. But I mean, this guy is, he's going to be a free agent. We know he's, going to hit the market, and he was a hot commodity. And Tampa, to me, was a team right up against the cap. I thought there's no way they could have possibly made this move. And what do you know? They go out and they just say, okay, we're going all in again. We're getting rid of our first rounder. And
heck yeah, they better go all in. I mean, it's kind of what you got to do. Yeah, I
mean, it's crazy to me. Like last year, they go out and they get Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman. You think two of the top trade bait guys again. You're thinking, oh great, there's no way they can do that again. And what do you know? They just go out and they just get the best guy on the draft or on the trade board again for another year in a row.
Yeah, certainly Tampa Bay. I mean, really, their acquisition is going to be getting back Kucherov, right? Like that's what they're really counting on. And David Savard. I mean, what a gift! David Savard just goes and he gets to play with Victor Hedman. That's
right. Yeah, this back end is now stacked even better than last year. They've got Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev, and Savard as your top four. That is as good as it gets in the NHL.
Yeah, and the way that they've played thus far, they've got Hedman with Savard, McDonough with Zernak, and then Sergachev is playing with whoever they slot in there with their Ben Thomas or whoever they want to stick in there.
Luke Shen, exactly. But Sergachev, obviously he's a dynamite on the power play, but still you got 4 or 5 really good defensemen there that, I mean, every team would be jealous to have. So
yeah, once Stamkos has been out a little bit and been hurt. If he can get fully healthy and Kucherov's fully healthy, watch out. It's going to be interesting. Although Kucherov, I don't think he's going to be able to play in the regular season at all. Even if he was healthy, they can't take him off LTIR because they don't have the money. They don't have the cap space now. Right. So they have to keep him on, and then in the playoffs they can bring him back because there's no cap in the playoffs.
Sure.
So you can kind of game the system there. I like that. I like that move, and likely that first round pick really like basically a second round pick. But Columbus stacking up their first round picks here. They're going to get another one a little bit later, and so that'll give them 3. So the Columbus Blue Jackets are definitely priming themselves to be very busy at the draft. I'm certain they'll be one of the teams everyone's looking at, seeing what they're going to do, because you never know. You try to package a couple of those and move up in the draft, and it's also likely that they themselves will have a pretty high pick in this draft. Somehow they have fallen to a place where they're only 3 points back of the Red Wings, which is the way that the Red Wings were playing earlier in the year. It is surprising to see how far the Columbus Blue Jackets have fallen. I think the Blue Jackets are interesting because, how long does John Tortorella last? And that's going to kind of be I guess that's the one good thing for Jarmo Kekalainen. Tortorella's lasted a long time. I think, has he been there? Not the whole time that Kekalainen was there. But I think that he's been there for a long time, right? Kekalainen started there in 2013. So he would have brought in Tortorella because Tortorella has been there since when? 2018.
Has it only been since?
Right?
No, it's been longer than 2018.
No, that's his last contract. I'm sorry. 2015 he was hired because remember he got fired from Vancouver.
Yep. And
was brought in there. So that's a pretty good track record. He's only hired one coach, and it's John Tortorella.
Yeah, so, it'll be an interesting offseason regardless because not only do they have Torts to think about, but you've also got Patrick Laine and trying to figure out what you do with him.
Right.
And not to mention you've got 2 goaltenders coming up the year after. You got a whole bunch of things to figure out if you're Columbus. So.
Yeah, Columbus will have a fun offseason. Small trade, the Devils acquire Jonas Siegenthaler from the Washington Capitals for a conditional third-round pick that happens to be Arizona's. And Arizona's draft pick is currently listed as conditional between Arizona and New Jersey. If the pick is not transferred to New Jersey, the third-round pick will be changed to New Jersey's 2021 third-round pick instead of Arizona's. So it's a condition based on another trade that will be the condition of this trade. Basically, the Capitals needed to trade out some salary. The Red Wings acquire Hayden Verbeek and a 5th-round pick that is Ottawa's in 2021 for John Merrill to the Montreal Canadiens. Any thoughts on? I don't know who Hayden Verbeek is, to be honest. That's young guy, 23 years old. Looks like he hasn't really played a whole lot this year. So
no, and that's just simply a contract for contract, right? They're just moving out a contract to bring in another one. But the 5th-round pick is really essentially what you're giving up for John Merrill. And yes, it's nice the Red Wings get another prospect, but losing the flow, that hair from John Merrill. Oh man, that's the most disappointing part of this whole thing, to be quite honest.
Yeah, Montreal. I guess they felt like they just needed to stack the cupboards just a little bit more. When you look at what Montreal has done, not just on this trade deadline, but really just in the offseason, after that not really a first round, but the preliminary round win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Montreal Canadiens went all in. And I think we're seeing that at the deadline. Like they're just trying to scoop up as many pieces. We know they got Eric Stahl earlier, and they're just trying to do anything to keep this roster going until guys like Brendan Gallagher come back and Ben Sherratt. And I think that whoever they play in the first round, it's going to be a tough out. Like they're not going to be as easy of an out as maybe some people think they might be. Hey, if that first round, it's looking more and more like it's going to be Toronto, Montreal, which would be a pretty epic first round. They haven't played each other in the playoffs since do you know when?
Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. I think, honestly, Toronto's going to match up with Edmonton in the first round. I think that's where the standings will fall at this point. So, okay. Which is what everybody wants to see, including myself.
That would be pretty. No matter how you cut it, it's going to be really fun.
Yeah,
it's absolutely. Either going to be Toronto, Montreal, Toronto, Edmonton. In the second round, you're going to get some combination of that. Hopefully, my God, hopefully the Leafs can figure out how to win a round. That'd be great.
Yeah, they better.
Okay, let's continue trucking through these. Actually, speaking of the Leafs, we have another trade. The Leafs acquire Stefan Noesen and Nick Foligno for a first round and a 4th round pick to the Blue Jackets and another 4th round pick to the Sharks, who grabbed 50% of the contract, which was ends up being $1.3 million. So because the Blue Jackets grabbed the other 50% as well. So it was a 50%, 25%, one of those deals. Your thoughts on this deal?
My gosh, I love this move for the Maple Leafs. I'm sure you're probably elated, but to me, this was one of the best pickups of the day, in my opinion. I know, again, I love the fact that, Dubas is willing to say, hey, we're going all in on this year. Here's the first rounder. We're going to go out and get a guy that fits really, really well in any locker room. He's a leader. He can still produce on the wing a little bit. And, I mean, this guy's the whole package, and I think he's going to fit very, very nice in terms of that middle six, and maybe you get an opportunity to, maybe bump Alex Galchenyuk off that top line. I don't know if you want to keep him up there all year. But regardless,
yeah, he's been kind of bouncing around. I got to think that Nick Foligno is going to get his shot with Tavares.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can play. That's the nice thing about him, is that he can play anywhere. You're almost getting your another Zach Hyman. In some
he's
respects,
a Swiss Army knife a little bit. Right?
Yes, exactly. Kill penalties and obviously a little bit older, but when you look at the way that he can really fit anywhere on this team, it's exciting. I don't mind giving up the first round pick. You got to do what you got to do. It is funny that you look at it and you go, okay, Taylor Hall, second round pick, Nick Foligno, first round pick. Like, if you had said that a year ago, Taylor Hall would get dealt for a second round pick and Nick Foligno would get dealt for a first and a fourth, people would have thought you're crazy.
Yeah, no way. I will tell you why I think that occurred, and why Foligno got more when we get to Taylor Hall. I'll dive into that a little bit more.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Personally, love the move. I'm excited to see how what happens after quarantine. I just saw he tweeted about yesterday a picture of him leaving his kids, which I'm sure would be a really hard thing to do. But good on him. He's going to come. He's going to try and help the Leafs win a cup. And one thing I like about what the Leafs have done here at the trade deadline, they went out and they got all these players who have killed them in the past in the playoffs. Nick Foligno destroyed them in the playoffs last year. And I'm glad that we don't have to play against him again. Riley Nash has played them twice, once for the Boston Bruins, once for the Blue Jackets. Obviously was a part of some winning teams there. And, we haven't played David Rittich in the playoffs. David Rittich destroyed us earlier in the regular season. So I like that they went out and got some guys that it was like, all right, we need to not lose to these guys again. Let's just go scoop them up. So I like that.
I love it.
Speaking of David Rittich, Leafs acquire him for a third round pick in 2022. The Flames retain 50% of the contract. Love the move. I mean, you just kind of had to do something with Anderson down, and Michael Hutchinson, bless his dirty little soul, he is not going to be in the net anytime soon. Please.
Yeah, I think as a Leafs fan, you got to be happy about that. I'm actually surprised, though, that honestly, I guess I don't really know as much about Anderson's injury, how severe it might be, if they're really that worried that they're going to go out and get a guy who is essentially a 1B, a good backup goaltender to come in and play with Jack Campbell. And maybe it is because, again, too, Jack Campbell's had some problems with injuries too, that maybe they're like, hey, let's get a guy who could potentially start and we don't have to worry at that point.
Yeah, I think it's twofold. You've got a guy like Rittich who can step in and he could start for you at any point. Anderson's down. You don't want Jack Campbell to get burned out. You don't want him to play all the rest of the games. You don't want Michael Hutchinson to play at all.
Right.
The other side of it is, Anderson has been prone to injury, and so has Jack Campbell, and they don't want to end up looking like the Colorado Avalanche. We talked about them earlier in the show. Last year in the playoffs, they had 2 injuries to their goalie, and they had Michael Hutchinson was their third goalie, who actually played okay in a couple games, and then he became Michael Hutchinson again. So I think this is just purely security. You got to think as David Rittich, you're just along for the ride, and you hope that maybe the opportunity presents itself. He's going to get to play it. Well, obviously he played a little bit last night, but not really. Kind of a weird, like, hey, you got traded, now play against your old team the next day. It's a weird transition. It's not like you're mad at... You're not one of those guys who's mad at your old team because they stopped believing in you. You were a UFA on a team that wasn't going to make the playoffs, so they needed to move you because, hey, they could acquire a pick. And there's like nothing personal about that at all. And he's going to get the opportunity to maybe play in the playoffs. That's great. And then you get to play all the guys that you were just hanging out with the day before. That's got to be that's a little strange. We'll just write that game off, which he loses in overtime. Okay, let's go. Ottawa Senators get a 7th round pick. I really like this move by the Islanders for Braden Coburn. Basically, there's your sixth, 7th defenseman for the Islanders. Coburn's won a cup, and you can't have a shortage of those guys around.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the whole key, right? You get a good number 7 defenseman to plug in case anybody goes down, because they've got some young guys back there, for the Islanders like Noah Dobson, Andy Green. We don't know where, how, he's injury prone. He's up there in age, so we don't know what you're going to get out of him. So you got a guy you can plug in on that third pairing at any point. The Stanley Cup obviously is there too, but then, you look at a lot of the teams that have won Stanley Cups in the past, at least the last 4 or 5 years, they've used 7, 8, 9 defensemen throughout the course of the playoffs. So it's going to happen. So go get yours. Yep.
And that 7th round pick has about an 8% chance of turning into an NHL player. So I'll take the over under on that. Speaking of defensemen, Mike Riley goes to the Boston Bruins via the Ottawa Senators for a 3rd round pick in 2022. And to me, that is a high price to pay for Mike Riley. A 3rd round pick. Whereas Braden Coburn, I know that Braden Coburn hasn't been spectacular this year, but I mean, I'm just a 3rd round pick for Mike Riley. This guy is one of the most overrated players over the last 5 years. I mean, when he came into the league with Minnesota, he was touted as, of course, he's coming out of the University of Minnesota. He's touted as this high scoring defenseman, and he has a pretty decent rookie year. And then he just, kind of bounced around. He's never played a full season. The most games he's played is 57 games in a year. And to me, it seems very odd to give up a 3rd round pick for, he's got 19 points in 40 games, but that's for a really bad team. He's playing up. He's not going to do that for the Boston Bruins. Seems like a high price to pay. I can't imagine that there were too many other teams out there willing to give more.
Yeah, I would have been, there were a lot of other defensemen. I guess I would have been more comfortable with, Boston trying to give up a 3rd round pick for. You could have tried to fit a guy like, I don't know, Ryan Murray, right? Obviously he's got a cap situation, or maybe even a Colin Miller. You can go after a lot of other defensemen versus a Mike Riley, in my opinion, who would have been a much better fit, would have been able to handle a little bit more minutes. Yeah, absolutely.
Kulikov went for a 4th round pick.
Yeah. Again, I think there were better options. I think they overpaid for this, but maybe Boston's that worried, or they really like this guy and they think he's going to fit in well, so they were willing to overpay.
That's right. Okay, one of the bigger trades of the day, Jeff Carter goes to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kings hang on to 50% of his contract. It's for a 2022 conditional 3rd round pick and a 2023 conditional 4th round pick. Here's the conditions. 2022 3rd round can upgrade to a 2nd round pick if the Penguins reach the Stanley Cup Finals and Jeff Carter plays in 50% of the games. The condition on the 4th round pick, it'll upgrade to a 3rd round pick if Carter plays in 50 games during next year, if he plays in at least 50 games. So potentially a 2nd and a 3rd round pick for Jeff Carter. You gotta like that. The Pittsburgh Penguins were able to, Ron Hextall able to negotiate those conditions in, because, hey, if it doesn't work out and those things don't happen, you gave up a 3rd and a 4th round pick for a guy who's going to likely come in and at least attempt to be your 2nd line center right now with Malkin out.
Yeah, and you gotta look at it too from a Pittsburgh advantage. They're getting a guy who can still score goals. He can still take draws. He's still producing. He's probably going to give you 30 to 40 points next year.
Yeah, he can still skate.
Yeah, but for a 3rd and 4th round pick, that's still a great value, and especially at the cap hit that they get him at $2.6 million for next year. That's next to nothing for a guy with a Stanley Cup on his resume, and
2.
two, and the ability to produce. So
I like
the move from Pittsburgh. Yeah, he does. Yep.
Yeah, he is too. you sure he is too?
Yeah, he came in with Mike Richards, I remember.
Yeah, that's right.
So LA when they won their cup, so their first one anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah, because he was in Columbus for a second there too.
For like 5 games or something, I think.
Yeah, 39. Yeah.
Right.
The only reason I know that is because I'm looking at it. Okay, let's go to the big'em. The biggest name, I'll say, dealt on deadline day. Taylor Hall sent to the Boston Bruins along with Curtis Lazar for Anders Bjork and a 2021 second round pick. Bruins also Sabres also hang on to $4 million. Your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, so first off, the reason why he managed to get only a second, whereas Foligno got a first. So it's the no movement clause, right? Yeah. That's what it boils down to. But he basically has the leverage where Buffalo has to get something for him because he's not re-signing as bad as this team is. And if you're Kevin Adams, you're saying, okay, crap, we have to take something at this point. And if Boston's willing to give a second rounder, I mean, why not, right?
Here's the thing. Here's my issue. I totally understand that. I get it. If Taylor Hall, and I know based on what Taylor Hall said afterwards, he made it pretty clear he wanted to go to Boston. I think it's out there that in the offseason he wanted to go and play for the Bruins, and they had too many things they had to move around and they couldn't do it. And I mean, hey, David Krejci's contract is ending at the end of the year. The Bruins do have space, and so Taylor Hall could potentially sign a nice extension here, and assuming that everything works out, he gets to go to the team that he wanted to go to in the first place. I get that, and maybe he said, I will not accept a trade to anyone except for the Boston Bruins, which I have a hard time believing if the Leafs said, we want Taylor Hall, and that he would say no. But,
I'm sure there were,
or the Islanders. I think the Islanders probably were in on that.
They probably inquired, but I'm sure, again, like most teams, they're probably scared off because of his lack of production, right? I mean,
2 goals.
He played a lot. Yeah, he played a lot of time with Jack Eichel and Eric Stahl. So these are guys that can still feed him the puck, and he just couldn't produce. And I think that devalued him a little bit more.
Yeah, he caught the Jeff Skinner bug.
Right. Yeah, and that's another reason why he didn't get as much in return for, say a guy like Nick Foligno, who has absolutely no center but still managed to produce.
Yeah. The other side to this, and if I'm Kevin Adams, this is his second trade deadline?
Second deadline, yep.
Second deadline. So you allowed a player to handcuff you, and essentially you allowed a team to also handcuff you. Like, he could have he made this deal in the evening when this actually happened. Like, it was when everybody was asleep, right? So this deal, to me, he could have waited until 2:45 p.m. You didn't have to do it the night before. To me, I look at it and I say, dude, what's the worst thing now is everybody knows that they can have you. Like, he let go because it was a panic move. Oh, I have to get something for Taylor Hall. We can't just keep him. And because of that, now I think that, other GMs I have to be looking at the Sabres like, well, we can feast on them. Like,
right.
I really think that there's something to be said about, well, no, I mean, if we're not going to get what this guy's worth, then we're just not going to trade him, and we're going to take that hit. And they could have done that. I get, maybe that hurts in the short term, but you need to have some balls. Like, you got to go, no, we're taking nothing less than a first round pick for Taylor Hall because he's freaking Taylor Hall. He's
a Hart Trophy winner.
Give us your first round pick, or you don't get Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
Or at least get two second round picks. Okay, I can live with 2 second round picks.
I would even live with a second and a third.
Second and a third, something. Which obviously the Bruins gave one of their third round picks to get Mike Riley, but they needed to get more. And if he was handcuffed, too bad. Like, just say, fine, okay, no problem, Taylor. You're going to be playing for the Buffalo Sabres for the rest of the year then, and you won't be going to the playoffs again. And you know what, Boston? If you really want this guy, too bad. It's going to cost you more than that. We don't really care. We don't need your third. Basically, the second round pick is a third round pick. Remember that too. Like, it's going to be probably somewhere in the 55 to 64 range, right? And remember, this next draft, we're going to have an extra team in there too. So,
right.
So the last pick of of each round is number 32. So, what if the Bruins go and win the cup? Now that pick is a 64th overall pick and Anders Bjork for Taylor Hall, and you gave up Curtis Lazar. I think this is absolutely a brutal trade. I think in more ways than just what was retained. Kevin Adams showed the guy has no stones. He should have said, nope, sorry. There is a minimum that you need to give up in order to get a guy like Taylor Hall, and we will not go below it. And he didn't do that, and that is going to screw the Buffalo Sabres for at least until he proves somewhere down the line that he's not going to let that happen again. And
yeah. That's a good point. So next year we'll see Rasmus Dahlin get dealt for a third rounder, right?
Well, I mean, he's going to have to deal Ristolainen. There's going to be some kind of blow up here because this team can't come back the way that it is. So who are you going to deal? What are you going to get? Everyone already knows that you're going to. I mean, Ristolainen only has 1 year left on his deal. Well, he's a UFA, so I guess we can get him cheap because it's the Sabres. I don't like it at all. I think you watch. This is it's gonna bite the Sabres for as long as Kevin Adams is their general manager. Okay, we'll stop beating on the poor, already bruised and beaten Buffalo Sabres. Small move. Adam Gaudette goes from the Canucks to the Blackhawks in exchange for Matthew Highmore. Adam Gaudette, patient zero for the COVID infection. The Vancouver Canucks. They didn't want him anymore. So I think there were issues beforehand, but small little move, but maybe a fresh start for both players, which is kind of what Jim Benning hinted towards about Adam Gaudette. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that move.
Nope, moving on.
Okay, Dmitry Kulikov to the Oilers. Really their big acquisition of the day, acquiring a guy who's like a 5th, 6th defenseman, and that is for a conditional 4th round pick. It'll become a 3rd round pick if they win a playoff round, which is reasonably likely. There's a decent chance. It's looking like right now, I know you think that Edmonton's going to play Toronto in the first round, but Edmonton right now 7 points up on the Montreal Canadiens. I know the Canadiens have 3 games in hand, but Montreal is not good enough to win all 3 of those games. So, and that still would put them out of the playoffs. So I think it's likely that we see a Winnipeg Edmonton first round, and I don't hate their chances. So, hey, a 3rd round pick for Kulikov, pretty good for the Devils. The Devils made out great on this day.
Yeah, they did pretty good. I will say, as far as this deal is concerned, I'm a little disappointed with Ken Holland that he didn't swing a little bit harder for somebody else. Don't get me wrong, Kulikov, he's had good defensive, metrics this year. His numbers have been looking pretty good, even though he's not producing from an offensive standpoint. Still pretty good, but I would have liked to have seen him swing harder for, maybe go after a guy like, literally anybody. Like I said, you could have gone after. I would have been happier with maybe Colin Miller from Buffalo, or even try to pry Alex Goligoski from Arizona. You could try to squeeze that cap in there somehow, or even maybe swing harder and go after Josh Manson from Anaheim, right? Do something to show this team, hey, I'm in it for you guys this year. We're going to make a push. This team worries me because, when you look at the top teams sitting in the playoff, Montreal, Winnipeg, and Toronto, Edmonton is below 500 in terms of win percentage against those teams. So that's why I do think they needed to swing a little bit harder.
Yeah, I don't disagree. One thing to note, Ken Holland hasn't exactly been somebody who's been able to pull off big trades to help his team. He's certainly been able to help other teams. I mean, you look back to some trade deadlines. The last one, he was with the Red Wings. Probably his last good move, really solid, helped the team, was when they dealt Tatar and they got the 1st, 2nd, and the 3rd round pick, which the Red Wings haven't actually used that third round pick yet that they acquired in that deal, so they still have their third round pick in 2021 from the Vegas Golden Knights. But obviously, getting Joe Veleno in that draft, and so that was a good deal. But a lot of them, you look at what he's done. I mean, with the Oilers, he flipped Lucic for James Neal. He did acquire Mike Green last year at the deadline from the Red Wings, which Mike Green didn't really do a whole lot for the Oilers. He did get Andreas Athanasiou from the Red Wings as well. He basically just went and got a couple players that that they liked, but they gave up 2 second-round picks, and that's really it in terms of significant moves that the Oilers have done. So since he became GM, and I know that they're somewhat cap-strapped, but he hasn't really been known for making great trades. He's a much better, like setting up a good scouting system and bringing in guys that way. And the Oilers just haven't been able to do that yet under Ken Holland. So we'll see how this works out. I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, where like this worries me. Like, why weren't the Oilers able to do anything more?
Right.
Based on what all these other teams were doing, we'll just give up a 4th round, 5th round pick, and this team will take 25% of the deal. Like, that was happening all over the place. And you'd think that the Oilers could have maybe done a little bit something like that as well, shipped out some salary. They've got lots of guys on LTIR anyways.
As long as Draisaitl and McDavid are there, they should be swinging for a home run every deadline to acquire somebody that can make a difference on that lineup.
Yeah. I mean, and not to mention the fact that they might lose Adam Larson, they might lose Tyson Barrie next year. Their goaltending situation is still really weird. They've got a lot of question marks, and still they're in like cap hell.
Are you kidding? Mike Smith is going to play till he's 50. He's going to be Tom Brady on that team, and
Tom
carry
Brady.
That goaltending.
Well, you'd have to win something to be Tom Brady.
Right. Well, there you go.
Okay, let's. The Sharks get Magnus Krona from the Lightning for Frederick Clausen, NBD on that one, and the Blackhawks get Josh Dickinson and Ryder Rolston for Carl Soderberg. The Avalanche go back and acquire a guy who played for them, I believe, when Soderberg was on the Avalanche last, 2018, 2019. He had a pretty good year, 49 points for the Avs, and he left as a free agent. So Soderberg goes back to the Avalanche.
Yeah, I like this move. I think it's a good depth move because, again, you've got that top line of Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen that's not going to get split up at all. So it gives you some depth in that middle 6 where you can, swap out maybe Nichushkin, Donskoy. You can move some guys around, and you got a guy in Carl Soderberg who, again, is familiar with that franchise and those players, so he should gel pretty quickly, I would assume.
Yeah, you gotta like this deal because the Avalanche. I think the one thing that you would say is a weakness is their depth at forward. I mean, up and down that lineup, obviously they are so top heavy, and that the top is so talented. They're a lot like the Boston Bruins have been, where they've got the great talent at the top. The one thing that maybe the Avs have that the Bruins don't is a Nazem Kadri, but the Colorado Avalanche bringing in Carl Soderberg, I think, really helps to solidify that bottom 6. Yep. And he could move up if you need to. Okay, the Calgary Flames, they get Emil Henneman, who was a second-round pick last year in the draft, along with a second-round pick in 2022 from the Florida Panthers in exchange for a 2022 sixth-round pick and Sam Bennett to the Florida Panthers. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked, to be quite honest. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think, it was wise of Florida to go out and, again, take a swing and go for somebody. But I think right now you're looking at Sam Bennett, you're thinking, okay, maybe a change of scenery. We can bring in a guy who has the potential to be a 40, 50-point guy who just couldn't make it click in Calgary, right?
Maybe he's never had more than 36 points in a year. And that was his second year in the league.
Being a 4th overall pick, I think you can expect this guy to have that kind of potential, right, where he could be a 40, 50-point guy.
Sure.
when you surround him with some more talented guys, like, obviously in Calgary they had Monahan and Gaudreau, but he never really played with those guys, so he didn't have a lot of, pieces around him to play with. Now you send him to a Florida team that, has a Patrick Hornquist, a Carter Verhaeghe, Nika Gusev, who they signed for $1 million. So you get these pieces now, Owen Tippett, again, a lot of good young pieces where you can potentially, move him up, and it gives you more flexibility as well, too, with, Alexander Wenberg. So if he's not panning out as, maybe he kind of, stumbles a little bit or has, a little bit of a poor streak going through. Now
Sure.
you have, options to put Sam Bennett up there on that second line center spot.
Sure, you're definitely buying about as low as it goes for a guy like Sam Bennett, and you're hoping that he can produce. I mean, one thing to note, in the last 3 years that he's been in the playoffs, he was there last year, the year before, and 16-17. In 19 games, he has 15 points in the playoffs. And in just the last 2 years alone, 13 points in 15 games. And 6 of those goals. So Sam Bennett has produced in the playoffs. Like, he is that type of guy. He's that gritty third line guy. I mean, when he came in the league, he was tiny as balls. I remember I don't think he could do one pull-up. Right. And that was a reason that he fell, was that teams thought that he was weak. And, obviously those teams weren't wrong. He shouldn't have been taken that high. But Sam Bennett he's obviously gotten stronger. He's filled out. Also, the Florida Panthers, that was the year that they took Aaron Ekblad. So he obviously went ahead. Imagine if, the Oilers hadn't taken Leon Draisaitl that year. Imagine if the Sabres had taken Leon Draisaitl and they had Eichel Draisaitl instead of McDavid Draisaitl. So, just some revisionist history there, trying to go back. But yeah, I like this move for the Panthers, because the Panthers are kind of putting together this team of players that other teams around the league don't want, and they're putting them into their correct roles, and it's really working for them. And plus, who doesn't want to live in Florida? Well,
right.
At least during hockey season time. Once it's like June, I don't want to live in Florida, especially like July, August. No thanks. Okay, a few more moves to go. The Blackhawks get a second and a third round pick from Vegas in exchange for, and then San Jose gets Matthias Janmark and a fifth round pick from Vegas, and then Vegas gets Matthias Janmark from San Jose and Nick DeSimone and a fifth round pick from Chicago. So kind of a lot of salaries moving around so that Vegas can do some other things. But second and a third round pick for Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hate this move for either side, right? Obviously, Janmark is a UFA after this year, but he's a nice third line guy.
Yeah, he's got 10 goals
for you. Yeah,
pretty
and
decent.
That's the thing. He can still put up a few goals, and if anything for Vegas, this kind of helps fill out their depth a little bit, because we know this is a team that has dynamic scoring on those top two lines, right? Between Stone and Pacioretty on that top line, and Smith and Carlson on the second line. It gives you more options now with Tuck and Janmark on that third line to really roll three lines and be more trouble for teams.
Yep. They needed some depth at forward. The Chicago Blackhawks also get a fourth round pick from Vancouver from Madison Bowie and a fifth round pick. So Chicago stacking up picks for this next draft. They obviously have some more scouts than everybody else. They've been watching a lot more video. Nobody can go to games, so they just watch streams of games. I could be a scout right now. Let's go to one of the biggest trade of the day. It involves your team, the Detroit Red Wings. They trade Anthony Mantha and his $5.7 million contract in exchange for a first-round pick in 2021, a second-round pick in 2022, Richard Panik, who was somewhat of a salary dump there for the Capitals, and Jacob Vrana, who is an RFA at the end of this year. Your thoughts on this monster deal? Kind of came out of nowhere, huh?
Yeah, you're not kidding, out of nowhere. I mean, this is a guy that, again, last two seasons, Vrana, we talk about him, 25, 24 goals. He can produce, right? I mean, granted, now he's been playing with some good centers up there. Obviously, he got a lot of time on that second line, but he did also see some time on the third line with Lars Eller as well. So,
hey, there's plenty of players that get put on teams' first and second lines that don't score 25 goals.
Exactly. I mean, the great thing for Vrana, right, is he goes into a situation where now he's going to get a lot more ice time because, he's sitting behind, TJ Oshie and Tom Wilson and Alex Ovechkin as far as, depth on the wing goes. So he's not going to get those top power play, top line, top 6 minutes. Now he goes to Detroit and he's got that opportunity, right? So
is he going to play? I guess the one game he's played so far, he played with Michael Rasmussen and Valtteri Filppula.
No, he hasn't actually played at all yet.
He hasn't played. He hasn't. They're projecting these lines for tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, so we'll see how he does. Obviously, you're right. Richard Panik, he's a salary dump move. The Wings gotta eat some salary there, but he's still around for a couple more years. But I mean, honestly, from a Red Wings standpoint, that's fine. They're not going to be competitive.
He's not that bad. Like he's not a bad guy to have on your fourth line.
Right, exactly. And for 2.75, it's not like he's crushing their cap to where they can't make any other moves anyways. But the big haul is getting that first and second round basically for Anthony Mantha because, I mean, from a Detroit perspective, right, you and I talked about it. I mean, we mentioned it in our potential, upcoming trades for the deadline that Mantha could have got moved as my wild card there. And that's because Yzerman's been adamant about possibly trading a top 6 guy. And when you look at, Mantha, right, Yzerman's always been, I think he's got a very good eye for guys that, are at their peak and, are just not going to produce anymore, right? I think the Capitals, they want, Mantha to fit in quite well with their top 6, and they think he's going to produce a little bit more. So get him now at 5.7, and that's a great deal. And I think that, right now it looks pretty good for him because he's a guy that has size, can score the goal, and shoot very, very well. So, he can sit behind Ovechkin and learn what he does and, hopefully get a little bit better at it. But for Detroit, right, when I watched him play, Mantha was a guy that when he's noticeable, he really lit up the net. But those games where he just wasn't doing anything, he was worthless. Wouldn't move his feet. He was inconsistent a lot. So you hope that maybe a change of scenery maybe works out better for him in the Capitals.
Hey, a goal and an assist in his first game with the Caps, so pretty good start.
Not bad. But, I mean, even if you're Detroit and you were given a first and second round pick for Mantha, I think you would have taken that anyways, especially for a guy who, is in his, closer to 30 than 20 now at this point in Mantha. And if you're a few years away anyways from being a potential playoff contender, how much can he really contribute anyways, where you get a guy like Vrana who's, a year or two younger, RFA, so now you kind of get a little bit of leverage in terms of salary, and you don't have to pay him $5.7 million now.
Yeah, he's not going to get that kind of money. I don't think so. Yeah, Mantha, I think is going to fit in really well with the Capitals, though. Like, I think they paid the price. I think that he is a better fit than Vrana is.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is going to be a win-win for both teams.
And I think Mantha's top end, I don't think we've seen it. And shoot, I mean, he's playing with Backstrom and Oshie, so he's getting every opportunity to go out and do something. And he was also playing on the power play with Ovechkin back there. You're going to scoop up a point or two, just feeding it back over to him. So I think good for both players, like good both for Vrana and for Mantha. Panik will get some more ice time. He kind of fell out of favor with the Caps, so I think good for all the players involved. And shoot, Steve Yzerman just showing why he's one of the best in the biz. Leafs acquire Ben Hutton for a 5th round pick. I like from the Ducks. I like this move because Ben Hutton, I think, can be that 6'7" defenseman for the Leafs, and he's basically going to be anybody goes down, insert Ben Hutton.
Yep, and he can still chip in a point or two here or there, and he's I like this move. It's a good depth move. Yeah,
I believe it was Kevin Bieksa said something about him being the guy that like you never have to worry about in the locker room. He's always happy and just is a great guy to be around, and that plays such a factor. Like especially with the way things are right now, like things are just more stressful. Everything's just more stressful for these guys. And all the protocols they have to experience. So when you get a guy who's got a really great attitude, you can't beat that.
Nope.
Montreal Canadiens make their final move of the day for Eric Gustafsson for a 7th round pick from the Flyers. That is the Blues. Montreal just kind of stacking out the rest of their decor.
Yeah, get some depth. I mean, why not, right? But if what this trade more or less signaled to me that Philly was saying, "Hey, we're out of the playoffs. We're not making it."
Yep.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
So,
yep, Philly's done. Which
terrible.
you look at the standings and it would be pretty hard for Philly to make it. Although it is pretty crazy. The Boston Bruins, where they were 2 months ago compared to now in the standings. There is a chance. I think it's unlikely, but there's a chance. Looking at the standings right now, the Boston Bruins could miss the playoffs if somebody gets really hot.
Yeah, I think the Rangers have that potential for sure. Yeah. Especially with Boston with their goaltending situation where it is right now, Rask and Halak being injured, you never know.
Yep. That definitely that'll hurt anyone. I'm surprised that the Bruins didn't go out and try to scoop a goalie, but
no, I think Halak's not too far removed from coming back, and I think they really like Swayman. So why bother, right? I mean, if you like what you got,
I suppose so. Yeah. A move I really liked. It kind of flew under the radar last minute. The Ducks acquire Hayden Fleury, who, if you remember, I mean, this guy was a high pick. What was he?
Seventh overall.
Seventh overall in 2014. Yeah. Never really panned out the way that the Hurricanes hoped, but they had so many dang defensemen, it didn't really matter. And then, so they trade him for Yanni Hakanpää, and man, this guy's just a monster. He's not gonna put up any points, but he's a monster back there on the blue line, which is, I think, that what the Hurricanes needed. Like, they needed something different than what they already had.
Yeah, and I mean, more to the point too, like you said, Hayden Fleury, I think, is a guy that never given an opportunity in Carolina. So now you go to a Ducks team that's slowly trying to rebuild here. Maybe you get a guy now that can maybe, has that potential to squeeze into your top four at some point, and it doesn't cost you much.
Yeah. I think it was a good move for both teams, because I think that, you get the defenseman that you want. You maybe, like, talent-wise, you're probably giving up a little more, but in terms of what you need for this playoff run, which, hey, if there's a year for the Carolina Hurricanes to go, it's this one. Like, if you can get past whoever you have to, if you can somehow get past the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think you're pretty. Everyone else, I think Carolina could beat. I think that's really the only team that I'd look at in this division and go, Carolina's going to have a hard time with them. So, especially with Dallas in the position that they're in, it doesn't look like Dallas is going to make the playoffs anymore. So, I think if you're Carolina, you gotta have the right pieces in place to be able to go on this run, and they're trying to do that. The San Jose Sharks get Alexander Barabanov from the Toronto Maple Leafs for Antti Suomela. I think more or less just a contract dump there for the Leafs. The Predators get Eric Goodbranson at $4 million from the Ottawa Senators for Brandon Fortunato and a 2023 seventh round pick. The Nashville Predators, supposed to be big-time sellers, go out and acquire the worst defenseman in the NHL.
Yeah, clearly they're thinking we want a guy that we can put as our number 7, but maybe you should just look past this guy, next time.
Yeah, that's, for now, after years of making fun of him, I'm having a brain fart. Who was the defenseman on the Detroit Red Wings that was just horrible for so long?
Oh, man.
Oh, he was on their team for years and years and years. He was making like $4 million or something like that every year, and he was terrible.
I don't know.
Oh, my goodness. How don't you know?
Yeah, that's... Are you talking about Danny DeKeyser?
No. Not Danny DeKeyser. It's going to bother me, so I'm going to have to try and figure this out.
Well, you figure it out. I'm going to go to the next one.
Okay, Jonathan Erickson. Yeah. Come on.
Okay, yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Terrible.
The actual worst defenseman of all time.
Yeah, most likely. Oh, yeah. Well, moving on, Philly getting a 5th rounder for Michael Raffl. Again, another pick or another, trade signaling that Philly is out of it, that they're done and getting rid of assets.
Yeah, and I like that scoop up for the Capitals. I like what Raffl can bring on that bottom six, and you can kind of slot him all over the place. He can kill some penalties, and he'll definitely provide a little bit of muscle.
Yep.
At least throw his little body around. And one last pick at like 255, the Winnipeg Jets do something as they throw a 6th round pick to the Canucks for Jordy Ben.
Yeah, this one to me was another disappointing pick for the Jets, right? So I don't mind the Canucks making the move to get some picks for a guy who's going to be leaving after this.
Well, yeah, and you don't mind the Jets getting Jordy Ben as a depth move, of course.
No, but I don't like that the Jets did nothing else.
Yeah.
In this, I think this is a team that's poised to make a run at it. And especially because when you look at the roster up and down, Blake Wheeler, 34, Paul Stastny, 35. They've got some older guys mixed in with some young talents. So why not make the move now, for some of those older guys while you've got a guy like Connor Hellebuyck at the top of his game?
No.
Your forward group is as dangerous as almost any forward group out there right now.
Yep.
Kyle Connor, to me, he flies under the radar as one of the better goal scorers in the NHL. I don't know why people don't talk about him more.
Hey, why don't we talk about him right now? We'll give him some.
Well, let's talk about him.
Kyle O'Connor, pretty good player. Okay. Now I will say, Tim Cheveldayoff did come out and say that they tried. They were in on some moves, and the players that they had pinned and that they were trying to acquire, those teams decided not to deal those players. So
you didn't try hard enough.
I guess, what do you do if the players that you want don't end up getting dealt? But yeah, you got to also Winnipeg. Like nobody's going to probably shake their no move clause to go to Winnipeg. So it's not like they were going to be in on Taylor Hall or anything like that. Like there wasn't a whole lot out there for the Jets, I don't think. Although when you look at even just the small moves that other teams made, like the Oilers getting Dmitry Kulikov, you couldn't have given up a 4th round pick for Kulikov. Like the same type of deal. Like especially since you're already familiar with him. There were just some players where you look and you go, why couldn't the Jets have done that?
Yeah, I honestly, the one guy I would have liked to have seen them go after, who I thought, could potentially add a little spark on the back end, was Tony DeAngelo from New York, right?
Well, he didn't. He would have gone to Montreal. Apparently, there was a deal in place, and Montreal would have given him a new contract, but he didn't want to take it. He wants the buyout, and because he's going to get more money, and he thinks, I think, in the offseason he's going to go out and he's going to get more money. He'll be a free agent, so they're going to buy him out. So I think in his mind, he wants the money.
And maybe that's the case. But I think if you're Winnipeg, take him on, and then you get a guy who at $4 million, you can still why wouldn't you want to go play for $4 million if you really think you're going to get that much more with the buyout in the offseason, right? Which I don't think he will. So
yeah. Well, and maybe that just. I don't disagree. Someone like that would have been nice for the Jets. I know that there's some teams that don't want Tony DeAngelo, but I think it's stupid. So
yeah.
Well, that is trade deadline day. Good little recap there, Justin. Nice work.
Yeah. Pat on the back to you as well.
Well, now that all the trades are done, we don't have a show for a while. No, I'm just kidding. We'll keep on talking hockey, and obviously the playoffs are upon us. So as we start getting closer to that, we'll be breaking down all the playoff races, and who knows, we'll be throwing in some top 10s. We haven't done the top 10 in a minute either.
There has been a few, yes.
We'll have to bring those back at some point. That's off-season stuff, though. So if you haven't checked out the mid-season futility awards, you probably should, because they were a hoot. Any final thoughts on this trade deadline before we wrap it up, Justin?
No, it's exciting. We've got 7 to 10 games for most of these teams left, and I'm excited. Playoffs are getting close.
Who has 7 games left? Nobody. 12. 12 is the least amount. Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Vancouver.
We're getting there.
Vancouver's got like 19 left.
We don't talk about them.
Are they going to like force all those games? Or are they just going to be like, you know what, you're so far out of the playoffs, we'll just let you not play?
That's a good question. I'm curious about that.
We'll see what happens. We'll see if everyone plays all 56. That'll be the other curious thing. Mm-hmm. If they'll like lower it down to like a 52 or a 54 or something like that, which could really screw with some teams. Like these teams that are already at 44 games, like the Arizona Coyotes, who are 1 point out of the playoffs, that would leave them with like 10 games left or 8 games left. You know, they've lost 5 in a row. They've just been stinking up the joint. Anyways, we'll talk about some of those teams on our next show. Find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be here for you. We'll be talking hockey real soon. We'll talk to you soon.